a coordinator and working with SurrogateFirst, I've come to find that a lot of intended parents have no idea that this is even possible. So I've asked Alyssa Schnell to come on. She's an international board certified lactation consultant and specializes in helping induce lactation for intended parents. Alyssa, thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm so excited to learn more about how you support parents.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for having me on. This is truly my passion. So maybe I'll start out telling you a little bit about myself and how I got to be here. As you mentioned, I'm an international board certified lactation consultant, but did not start out my journey that way. I am the mother of 3. I have 2 children by birth and my 3rd by adoption, and breastfed my 2 children by birth. It was just a wonderful, amazing experience. And I knew that I wanted to offer my 3rd child all the benefits that my other 2 children have, as far as the health benefits of human milk, the nutrition and immunity, but also the bonding, that connection that happens through nurturing the baby through breastfeeding. And that was 16 years ago. My youngest is 15 now. It was a long time ago. And so I started just researching everything I could find. There were a couple books at that time, it was all about adoptive breastfeeding. We didn't talk a lot as much about surrogacy then, but the books I found were they were outdated, they were incomplete, they were vague. There was some information online, but it was also very limited. So I started using more resources. I started looking at journal articles. At that time, I was a Leche League Leader. Leche League is an international organization of volunteers of parents helping other parents with breastfeeding. So I was part of that organization. So I used all my resources there, did tons of research. I'm kind of a researchy kind of person, gathered it all, and ended up having just a beautiful, amazing breastfeeding experience. I would say, honestly, one of the highlights of my life was that experience. But I knew I had so much advantage that most people who are starting this journey don't have. I mean, I'd already experienced breastfeeding. So I was an experienced breastfeeding mom. I had all the resources of La Leche League. Most people are not starting out with all of that. So I wanted things to be different for parents to come so that they wouldn't have to have all the challenges and struggles. And also, it felt very lonely. I felt like I was just the only I know I wasn't the only person anywhere doing it, but it felt like that. So I wanted things to be different, became a lactation consultant. So before I was volunteering, I decided to take it to the next level to provide some additional clinical support. And I also wrote a book. This was the book called Breastfeeding Without Birthing that I wish I had. That something that was research-based, that was very complete, up-to-date. And so I hope that that's going to make things better for parents coming. And also, this is what I do in my consultation services, is offer support for non-gestational parents. And many of them are through surrogacy to help them breastfeed. So what I thought I would talk about today is, I think about breastfeeding. It's a compound word. We have breast and we have feeding. And you can think of the breast, being sort of the latching onto the breast being one component. The feeding, the food, is the human milk. And so even though they're connected, I want to talk to you about both of them separately today. So let's start with talking about the milk. How can an intended parent provide human milk for her baby or their baby? So there's several ways that could happen. One is through inducing lactation. So that's really where my specialty is. And inducing lactation means starting or initiating milk production without the hormones of pregnancy and birth. So it could be someone who's never been pregnant or given birth. It could be someone who has been pregnant and given birth, but a while ago. They're trying to bring in milk for a different baby that they didn't birth. And so that's one primarily way that a parent could provide that milk. And so I'll tell you a little bit about how it works, how to do it. It could feel overwhelming. So the primary way that we bring in milk is through stimulation of the breast or chest. And that looks like it can be manual stimulation. It could be through a breast pump, and it could be with the baby nursing. So usually when we start inducing lactation, ideally it happens way before the baby arrives. So the baby isn't an option, but we have other options to use. Now, on top of that, so that's a foundation. On top of that, we can do things to help that go more quickly, make more milk, and those can include pharmaceutical medications, herbs, acupuncture, acupressure. There's a whole slew of things that we can add on to the breast or chest stimulation to make that work better. So the way I think of it is we're trying to convince our bodies to make milk without a pregnancy. So let's convince it in every single way we can to make that work. And not all of those ways are going to be something that every intended parent wants to do. So it needs to be customized and make informed decisions about if you do this, it's going to really help. If you do this, you might make less milk, and we kind of work through.
It's very similar to IVF though, because as a surrogate and someone going through surrogacy, we have to trick our bodies into believing that that embryo is our body's and it accepts it and grows it. And so there's, while our bodies aren't producing an embryo, they're not producing an egg, we've got to trick it into doing that. And there's, many different ways. So I love that connection with inducing lactation.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I like that. So the way I think of inducing lactation is in 3 steps. The first step is sort of a simulated pregnancy. And this is, again, tricking our bodies so we can make the body think that it's getting ready to make milk. So step 1 is actually not about making milk. It's about tissue growing and developing pregnancy. So pregnancy, you don't need to make milk, but the breast will get heavier and fuller and enlarged. And toward the end of pregnancy, there can even be leaking, or even if there's not leaking, there usually, if things are going normally, there is some first milk in there. And if a pregnant person does hand expression at the end of pregnancy, there's some first milk there. So that's what we want in step 1 of inducing lactation, have our sort of simulated pregnancy where the milk making factory is getting ready to go. And that can last several months, just like pregnancy lasts several months. It takes a while for the breast to get ready to make milk. Step 2 is starting to make milk before baby arrives. Step 2 is often very involved with doing a lot of pumping. Usually lasts about 6 weeks. And the idea then is we really want to start bringing in milk. There's no analogy with pregnancy with this one, but the reason we do a step 2 is right after a person gives birth, the hormones of delivering the placenta actually say, well, making that tiny bit of the first milk, I want to ramp it up and make lots of milk for the baby. When we induce lactation, it doesn't go like that, unfortunately. It goes very, 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 very slow. So if we can start that process before baby arrives, the parent can have a significant amount of milk ready by the time baby arrives. So step 2 is pretty step 1 is not very time intensive. Step 2 is pretty time intensive, lots of pumping. And every day the goal is a little bit more milk, a little bit more milk, a little bit more. And then step 3, that's the big prize. Baby's arrived, parents making some milk, and nursing baby. So that's the gist of how it works. I know sometimes there are concerns that, I mentioned medications. Will the medications be in the milk? Most of the time, very, very little amount of medication gets in the milk. And this is where each parent can decide what they want to do. And also, not all the medications are artificial hormones. So there's lots of ways to feel really safe about that milk. Some studies that have been done on the milk, the composition of milk with inducing lactation, show that it's comparable to the milk after giving birth. And I just say in all my years doing this, I've never seen a baby have any negative impacts, only good impacts. So, but most people who induce lactation will bring in some milk. So that's a good expectation, especially if you're working with a lactation professional with experience who can help you be successful. It's really realistic to expect some milk production, which is really cool, but it's also realistic to expect only a partial milk production, that most people who induce lactation make some milk, but not all the milk their baby needs. So in my own experience working with clients, I've had clients make as little as drops at a time and as much as all the milk their baby needs. But most people, they're right there somewhere in the middle. And so what that means is they're going to have to provide food in another way. And so there's several options there, either donor milk or formula. And donor milk can look a lot of different ways as well. Some intended parents will get donor milk from their gestational carrier, which is a wonderful way to arrange that and feels very safe and secure. Some other options could be family or friends. reach out to family or friends, who are pregnant or who have babies, and gently ask, if you have any other extra milk that you pumped, I would really appreciate it. If that's not available, there are Facebook groups that are all about informal peer-to-peer milk sharing. And so you would go to a group in your city and somebody would post, oh, I have this many ounces, and they might say something about themselves. Oh, I'm a non-smoker and I take such and such medication and I have these allergies or whatever. And the other person can say, that seems acceptable to me. And there's definitely ways to do that safely. There are guidelines for safe milk sharing, but it can be done in a very safe way. You can also purchase milk from a nonprofit milk bank. That is very, very safe. The donors are screened, the milk is pasteurized. That milk is primarily geared towards very ill or preterm babies. So if you do have an ill or preterm baby, definitely advocate for that during your hospital stay. But hopefully you won't. Hopefully you'll have a healthy full-term baby. And so that milk from the nonprofit milk bank is available to you if there's extra, if they have extra after the needs of the sick babies are met. It can be super pricey though, like $4 or $5 an ounce. And yeah, very, very expensive. So if you think of a baby over a month old needs about 25 to 30 ounces a day, it's generally not like a long-term solution, but it's available to consider. You can also purchase milk from another individual, and I would say do not do this. This is not a safe thing to do. They did some research where these university people purchased milk from people online, and what they found was, because these people are motivated by making money, not like somebody in your community who's giving you the milk because they care about babies and families and want to help each other, they're motivated by money. And so what they found was the milk volume was boosted by adding water or cow's milk or formula. They also had very high amounts of bacteria, which is really remarkable because breast milk itself has antibacterial properties. It's actually hard to grow bacteria in it. So they must have been super unhygienic. So do not buy it, formula from another individual. Now, if you're doing milk sharing with somebody in your community and you want to thank them by giving them milk storage bags or making a meal for them, lovely. But we don't want to buy it. So those are some options for donor milk to either supplement what you've already made, or instead of inducing lactation, that's an option too. And then of course we still have formula. And so all three of these, a lot of times parents will do some kind of combination of 2 or 3 or even, whatever works for them. So I covered the food, the milk component. And so now I want to talk about the food delivery system. So if somebody induces lactation, the baby's going to get milk directly from the breast. It's awesome. But usually the baby's going to need more, right? So how do we give that? Well, we all know about bottles, and that's an option. So some breast and some bottle. There are some challenges with this, and one is the way the muscles the baby use to get the milk from this nipple and this nipple are different. And so to introduce both of these things to a newborn can make it challenging for the newborn to go back and forth. Now, there are things we can do to help with that as lactation consultants to minimize that. The other challenge can be if there's not very much milk here, but plenty of milk or formula flowing here, smart babies will say, I don't want this. I want this, where the flow is. So, and they can start rejecting the breast. Again, there are things we can do to help minimize that from happening, but it is a risk. So another approach that can be taken is, rather than supplementing with a bottle, we can use a nursing supplementer. This is just one particular brand. This is a Lactate. This is my favorite. And so you put your extra milk or formula in here. This tiny feeding tube leads to the nipple, and it's serves as the external milk duct. So no matter how much milk the parent is making, so here's an example of what it might look like. Flat parents will tape it on. That was helpful for this presentation, but you can see how it goes right to the tip. The baby latches onto all of it, and as the baby gets the milk in the breast, they also get the milk that comes through the feeding tube. So even if nothing is coming out of the breast or chest, the baby can still exclusively feed in one place. So it eliminates that risk of babies getting confused or preferring bottles over breast. It also does another thing, and that is because there's more flow, baby stays on the breast or chest longer, sucks more vigorously, and that itself helps to make more milk. So not only is this a supplementation device, it's a milk making, milk growing device. So huge fan of the nursing supplementer. On the negative, everything has pros and cons. You know, we're mostly not too familiar with these things. We're very familiar with bottles. We've seen them before. This can feel tricky. You have to figure out how to assemble it. And then also, if you've never nursed before, not only are you learning how to latch a baby, but you have to learn to latch a baby with this extra little component to it. So it is challenging. If you can get through those first couple weeks, in the long term, it can really be helpful for breastfeeding success. And this is where working with a lactation consultant can help you, somebody who's used to using those, who can answer your questions, can make a big difference. I will give one little hint that I share with all my clients is that if they're thinking about using a nursing supplementer, go ahead and get one before baby arrives. Fill it with water, take it apart, put it together, like get as familiar with it as you can without the baby, so that you don't have a hungry baby and you're like, I don't know what to do with this crazy thing. You're as familiar as possible. You could even, suck the water through the straw to feel confident it works. You could even put it at your nipple and have the partner suckle and feel more confident that way. So there's lots of little tools and tricks to make this as easy and as successful as possible. And I think that kind of covers what I wanted to share for intended parents. I think that you had some questions that you wanted to ask me about.
Yeah, I did. I find that's just so amazing. I know that, as a mom and then as a surrogate or gestational carrier, I've pumped and everything like that for the surro babies. But there's also, it's not extended time. It wasn't done for months. It's more so for maybe the first 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And then I'm stuck with engorgement. And so we always want to support our parents and give those babies the best start they possibly can be. And we understand all parents make their decision. But if a parent is wanting a surrogate to pump, do you have any tips for how to help with when we're weaning off of the pumping for the surro baby?
Yeah. I mean, ideally, weaning from breastfeeding or pumping should happen gradually.
Okay.
And so what that could look like is gradually decreasing the number of pumping sessions per day and also gradually decreasing the length of the pumping. So if there's milk in the breast that stays in the breast, that tells the body, oh, we don't need any more, so let's slow down. So leaving the milk in there is good. Obviously, too much is going to cause engorgement and plug ducts and stuff like that. So it becomes that very delicate balance of leaving a little bit, but not so much that it's problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you have to listen to your body and just take it slow. Now, I did work with a gestational carrier who the family she was working with were ready to be done getting milk, and she also was going on vacation. And she was like, well, they don't need the milk and I don't want to be pumping anymore because I'm going on vacation. And there are ways that we can quicken that to make it happen more quickly. Some of the things that we say don't ever do when you're breastfeeding because they dry up your milk, you can use those. Like, for example, I can give you a couple of things. One is sage tea can dry up milk. So you can try that as a more gentle approach, but also decongestants like Sudafed. They dry up your sinuses, they dry up all your secretions, so they significantly decrease milk production. So if you want to make milk, don't ever take a decongestant, but if you want to dry up milk, like things like that, you can use to kind of make the process go more quickly if you feel like you need to. But if you have the time, then we just gradually drop off a pumping session every day and then make the pumping sessions shorter.
And are you able to support parents all around the world? I mean, with, the technology and Zoom and all of this, are you open to parents that are, going down this process of becoming, parents via surrogacy? And sometimes they're not in the same country, or sometimes they're on the East Coast. Do you work with parents all around?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yes, I offer telehealth. That most of my clients are not local. So we do it all telehealth. I offer a consultation package that is 4 consultations. And because I mentioned that I think of inducing lactation in 3 steps, 4 consultations is perfect because there's one for each step, except for step 3, which is when the baby arrives. Obviously, I'm not there at that moment. So we meet before step 3 starts and then right after once baby arrives. So we meet 4 times and there's numerous emails back and forth because once we make a plan, once it gets put in place, there's always questions. I provide a written plan. So I'm a very detail-oriented person. So we agree together, the parent and I, how they want to do this because there are many, many options. And then I write it all up for them. And I've worked with clients mostly within the United States, throughout the United States, but also I've done international because, you know, the internet, we can do that. Yeah.
And when should they reach out to you? At what point from due date should a parent reach out to you and start the process? Because it is a long process. Like you were saying, that second stage, you know, can be 6 to 8 weeks, I believe is what you were saying. So yeah, when's a good time to reach out to you?
With surrogacy, my favorite time to start the process is right at the end of the first trimester. The advantage of that is, you know, the pregnancy is fairly secure at that point, but it still leaves a good 6 months to get ready. And that step 1 is not very time intensive, so don't feel like it's going to be 6 months of intensive work. Just the very step 2 isn't time intensive. But if we can get that several months to prepare the breast, just like it happens in pregnancy where it takes several months, that's ideal. So if I get asked, I say end of first trimester, but if somebody's excited and wants to start earlier, they certainly could. Or let's say they learn about it later. This happens a lot. They find out later in the game that I didn't even know this was possible. And now my baby's coming in 2 months or 1 month or very soon. That's okay. We always can work with that. There's ways to jumpstart the process. So we can start it even after baby arrives, anytime. It's just that when there's more time means more options and more milk when baby has arrived, but we can start at any time.
That is so important to remember that, you know, it's 9 months in, you know, for a pregnancy and your body is slowly changing. And so if there's not that pregnancy, there still needs to be that time to be able to have a woman's body, you know, hormones and produce milk. And so, and I think that might even be a special way for the intended mother and the surrogate to bond during the pregnancy, that she's going through her own you know, experience of creating the milk, of going through the, you know, different herbs and the actual pumping and you know, breast. And so I think that might be a way for an intended mother to kind of connect with the pregnancy even more. I know for me as a surrogate, I try to do everything I can to make sure that mom's part of it. Belly's kicking, ultrasounds, because it's not my baby. I'm gonna grow him and I'm gonna, you know, do the best I can, but ultimately he's for her, you know, or for intended parents that are, you know, same-sex couples. And so I think this would be a way to be able to bond and feel like doing something part of that pregnancy even more. So I love the idea. I definitely recommend you to all of our clients that are able to induce lactation or open to inducing lactation. And I can speak from 2 of our clients that they love you. They love your knowledge. Just you're so kind and patient and educated, and your detailed reports are actually amazing. So coming from someone who's seen it on the other side, that's why when I found out, I was like, I got to get a hold of her. I've got to have her come on, because it is a bonding time. And we can bond with a bottle. We can bond, you know, as parents with our children in other ways. But if this is possible and the parents are willing to do that, I think this is a special way too for them to kind of just spend that time with their child, because Lord knows they've waited years, you know, for that moment of holding their child and feeding their child. And so we definitely want to support them any way we can at Surrogate First. And we appreciate you coming on and your knowledge. I mean, I just think it's amazing. I wish that more people knew about, you know, this possibility, because so many parents I talk to, they're like, what, is that a thing? Like, yes, it's a thing. Like, you could do it.
Yeah.
Listen,
I could make a couple other comments if you have a minute.
yeah, I would love to.
A couple things. One is about the bonding. You know, that time in step 2 where there's that pumping, that is a wonderful time to take some time every day, quiet time to be with your baby, even though you're not with your baby. It's a way to connect. And I found that really, like, when I was going through it myself, it felt really, really important that time, and that I was doing something when I couldn't do everything I wish I could do for her. This is something that I could do. Um, and I also wanted to mention, you mentioned same-sex couples, and I'm assuming you mean same-sex female and same-sex male couples that you work with. So for same-sex female couples, one or both parents can breastfeed. When both parents share the breastfeeding, it's called co-nursing. It can be really beautiful, just a way to share in the joys and the struggles that happen with breastfeeding. And, you know, I mentioned that if you induce lactation, most people don't make a full supply. Well, if you have two people, then it's times two. So, you know, that could be a wonderful thing to consider. But also, if just one parent is interested, that's okay too. And then as far as for same-sex male couples, options are there as well. You know, obviously the amount of glandular tissue in a cis male is not going to be the same, so the potential for making milk is quite a bit less. There still is glandular tissue there. So that's an option, but there's also the option to do the nursing without making milk. And so many different things, that ways that parents can, especially, you know, using, you know, a nursing supplementer such as this, you know, you don't have to make any milk. It can be a little harder to latch on if there's less tissue there, but you know, it can happen. I just want people to know there's so many options, that it's not like you're breastfeeding or you're bottle feeding formula. Like there are so many things in between, so that each family can find that sweet spot that's for them.
That's amazing. So we will open up our, we'll open that up to all of our parents just to let them know. I mean, it definitely is, it is a special time. And so we just appreciate you having a heart to help families go through this. And when there's not a lot of support and there's not a lot of education out there, to have someone who is specializing in this. And I'm sure there are others, but word around town from the parents I've talked to, you're it, so we are just so honored. And I will, definitely be sharing your information, and hopefully we'll be able to have some great stories from parents of this experience. And I love that you were talking about that daily intention, of even when you're not pregnant, of the pumping or of the exercises that are needed. That's time you're thinking about your baby. That's time that you are, praying or just loving. And so that's such a great idea. And I think that, I really hope that this helps parents. This webinar does help parents to know that they have a part, they can do something when it comes to this part of the pregnancy and birth.
Yeah, a lot of parents have told me that they found it really healing for them, especially if they felt like their body has failed them in the past. And then they do this amazing thing of making milk, and everybody says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you, I didn't know you could do that." Like you feel like a superhero, you really do. And it can be really healing for a lot of people.
And I would assume, though, this is a hard process. It takes time and it takes work. So it definitely is not, taking a magic drink and all of a sudden you've engorged yourself. This is work.
Yeah, I guess I wish it was in some ways, but it is work, just like all of the other things we do in parenting.
That's worth it.
It's an investment in your child.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us before we go?
I don't think so, other than maybe, if people are interested, they're not quite ready to take the leap with a consultation, check out my website. There's more information there, but also, the book can be a really good starting place.
And that's called Breastfeeding Without Birthing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I believe I've actually seen that on Amazon.
It is on Amazon. Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. And then how would they be able to get a hold of you or contact you through your website? Did we share your website yet on here?
I think you might have, but it is, you can either reach it through my name, Alyssa Schnell, IBCLC, or you could go to breastfeedingwithoutbirthing.com. And there's information about the consultation services, a whole section on frequently asked questions. And then if somebody goes through all that and they still have some questions or concerns, I do offer like a free 15-minute phone call. If they're like, my situation's a little unique, I'm not sure if this is going to be a right fit, then a little phone call can be really helpful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Um, well, that's it, guys. I'm so thankful. I love everything birthing. I love everything to do with just growing families, no matter what they look like. And we are so thankful. If you are a family that is going through surrogacy or even going through adoption, whatever that may look like for your family to grow, know that there are resources out there, there's support out there. Even if you're not going through, surrogacy, but you need more information about this and you can't remember the website that Alyssa gave, definitely reach out to us at SurrogateFirst. We're here. We're all things babies, all things growing families. And so even if we may not have the right services for you, we definitely will point you in the right direction. If you are going through surrogacy and you've just found out you're not going to be able to carry your child, reach out to us. We want to make sure that you're part of the pregnancy, that we find you an amazing surrogate. If you have any questions about any of this, even surrogates, if you're having questions about lactation or how to produce enough milk for the babies, reach out to us on that. We can give you the right resources. Our website has different blogs, different resources on there, and then we're always available. If you have any questions, you're going to reach out at info@surrogatefirst.com. Again, that's info@surrogatefirst.com. Or you can reach me out on Facebook World, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. We're here for you any way that you need to communicate. I thank you so much for this time, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.